Hey, Denise Ramon at deniseramon.com. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. And the family good?
Everybody's doing well. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And hi, Eric. I love you. I just talked to you not that long ago, but we're going to have an awesome session about the evolution of the education system. I just got through watching this documentary, The Miseducation of America, and it's quite interesting. So first of all, I'll just open the mic to you. What, from the beginning, I think Benjamin Franklin started the first public school, not sure. But can you tell me how things have evolved and why?
Sure. First, Eric wants to say, hi, Mama. He says, you are beautiful. He says, you really look beautiful. He likes your hair, he said. So I don't know if you've done something different with your hair, but he says he loves your hair.
Aww.
So with that, he said, he says, we've been in a classroom where teachers have been trying to teach, and as we go on, he says things, we start to organize things better to where it's more of a consistent thing. And he says, and this is the way that it was going. It's like, when you mentioned Benjamin Franklin, but I feel like there was somebody maybe
earlier,
yeah, or something like that, the way he says, because I see someone like right behind him. Decided that this would be good to get this the information, but to have a more structured environment, because then people know that they're coming to learn and this is what they're doing, so they're prepared and stuff. And as it progressed, they fine-tuned things and got better. But then Eric says there came a time where it's almost like it got rigid in the education system and started not being as flexible for things to change and to move forward. And of course, and as population grew, things got larger and larger and larger. So then they just it's kind of like they went back in time and said, okay, this is exactly how it has to be.
Yeah.
And okay, everybody has to follow that.
I'm sorry, what triggered that rigidity, Eric?
He said, the feeling of not being able to control. So they wait a minute, instead of going with the flow, they just would wait a minute, I feel like I'm out of control. So now we have to box it in and stuff, instead of expanding as they had been prior years. We've been expanding and because he says they didn't teach all these subjects in the beginning. It's
just the writing and arithmetic pretty much. But yeah, and I think that we lost the ability to accommodate different cognitive styles. Like we have the gatherers, that are able to focus and sit in rows and desks. But then we have the hunter cognitive styles. Those are people who tend to be impulsive. You have to be that way to be able to jump your prey, and distractible, which means scanning the environment for prey. I mean, so that's ADHD, but that's not a disorder. It's just a cognitive style that public schools, or maybe most schools, period, have not been able to accommodate, like the Montessori schools, for example. The ones that understand that many kids learn in a multisensorial way.
He said, yes, he said, and he said, you're correct on the different styles, because everybody has a learning ability different from others. And he said, but he's showing me it's like the feeling of they felt like they were out of control, so they had to find a way to control. And he says ADHD and all of that, that's nothing new. That's been around forever. It's just now that we have a way to publicize it more. But he says, but they worked around that. And he showed me back in the 50s and 60s and stuff, they were able to work around that more because it was more interactive, instead of just sitting at a desk for however long they sit at a desk. And Erik says they knew that recess needed to be a part to get out their energy and stuff and allow it. He said they even kind of pushed back how much time they get outside and recreational time. And he says that it's more about not understanding what's needing to be done. So they're trying, and he says they, and I feel like it's whoever is involved with the education system with that, since they don't know how to control what's, like go with the flow, they try to control it and put everybody in a box. And if you don't fit in the box, and you either have to you find other alternatives if you're fortunate. And he says, and this is why charter schools started up and things like that, because they saw a drastic need for something different.
Right.
So they just, well, let's do this for the high risk in that. But there's people who are high risk that don't fall behind in grades. They just completely say, I quit.
Yeah, I know. All right. So I think it was John F. Kennedy, before the public sector could not unionize, but I think executive order, I don't know what, decided, yeah, they can, and the teachers union came into being. What are the pros and cons of having a unionization for teachers?
Erik says it was a place of protection for the teachers, because it's the teachers needed some form of protection, because it's almost like they could get rid of you and not question, like there was just nobody supporting. There wasn't an HR, so to speak. And so the union
Job security, basically. So
yeah. So HR, so the union acts like an HR, and it also gives the teachers a sense of security and stuff, where they have a place to go, because when you can't go to your principal or superintendent or whatever, you have to be able to go someplace. And he said, but with that, he says, some of the cons are, there is also some guidelines. Well, they can only do so much. Yeah. Like they can go to 1 through 10, but if you need them to go to 12, they can't do that. And because it all runs back into the school system. It's like they can only go so far.
What do you mean? Are you talking about grades or
like what they can do as far as supporting the teachers?
Oh, I see. Yeah,
and stuff like that. Yes.
Okay, so how do you think that can you talk about the teachers unions and their handling of this COVID pandemic?
Well, the main thing Erik says is they want is safety for the teachers also, because they also have families that they have to. And a lot of these teachers also have kids in school.
Yeah.
Erik says, and a lot of these teachers, he said, are bringing into concerns about the children in the inner cities and that, and also to teaching online is not a solution.
Yeah. But now the science is that, according to John Hopkins, is that these lockdowns did nothing to help prevent deaths and hospitalizations, et cetera. And the cons for children, some of who have been half of their life behind, with masks, they don't even know how to pronounce words because they don't see the teacher or other students pronouncing it, et cetera. This is one little tidbit. So what should the teachers have done differently in regards to that?
Well, Erik says you're right about the pronunciations and stuff, and it also helped kids to stay hidden, to ones that are very introverted or anything, that it helps keep them very, like, they don't have to show themselves in that. And it helps them to be less seen, which isn't a help, but it provides that shield for them to be less seen. So Erik says with the union, though, what they could have done different, he says, they also too had to follow guidelines.
Yeah.
They can do a wide range of stuff within the range.
Yeah.
And with the pandemic, he said there was so much fear filtered into the world
Yeah.
that nobody knew what was correct or not. So we just bounce into what our fear is and we follow that.
That's super easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and look back through this John Hopkins lens and say, oh, well, okay, now but it's too late. Horses out of the barn. So what effect will this form of the kids doing online out of school learning, what kind of effect, if any, will that have on their future? Socially, psychologically, educationally, etc.
Well, Erik says socially, psychologically, it's gonna, for those who are not very outgoing and stuff, it's gonna keep them from being outgoing. It gave them permission to not go out and be among people and interact with people. But then Erik says, but there are some pros to this, because he's showing me what it is showing, though, on another area is that you can go to college and do it almost everything online, which will cut down the cost of college.
Yeah.
And you can do it on your timetable, not their timetable.
Well, that's college students. They're adults, but a little kid. I mean,
well, they're showing. He says for the kids, though, it's there are going to be kids who fall way behind. He says there's going to be a lot of kids, especially inner cities, and that who will fall through the cracks and just not be able to excel as if they were going to school in a brick and mortar type environment. But Erik says, though, he's telling me, he goes, Mom, but this is going to stop with the online. It is going to stop. He says, everybody says, not everybody, but he's saying people are saying, no, this is how they want to repress this and that. He says, eventually this is going to stop. And he has been telling me this for over a year, that by September of this year, we're in 2022, that we're going to start seeing doors opening more.
Good. They should have a long time ago, really.
Yes.
Schools have a 100% fail rate on reading and just these standardized tests, and so they're not even doing the test. Let's not do the test. Let's just bury our head in the sand, kind of thing. So that's not cool. But this online for kids that are young, I mean, you have to have somebody there supervising them and making sure they're accountable and not using their calculators, cheating and stuff like that, or not even showing up, whatever. So, and that's really hard when both parents work and
have to work.
And there's some people that just the school's going to take care of my kids' education. I don't need to check homework. I don't need to do anything. And that's a big problem.
There's a lot of that going on, he says, because there are a lot of children whose parents didn't finish school as well. So they aren't able to give what they definitely don't have. And it's been a generational thing, so they don't see anything. But Erik says, though, that he's making me feel like down the road, there's going to be something like a special type project or something for if you went to school during this time frame, we have scholarships and other things for you to help you along. Good. He's showing me like this is something that they're going to have down the road. It's almost like he's showing me like the commercial for asbestos. If you work between this time and this time in asbestos, you qualify to be in this lawsuit. And he's telling me this is something like if you were in this time frame, then you qualify for like a scholarship or extra whatever it is. And Erik says this is definitely shifting the way we teach our children, because it's almost like we're not teaching them it's like he says, we're not teaching them how to read and write and do math and all this stuff. We're teaching them how to pass a test.
Oh, yeah. We're not really teaching them how to think either.
Correct.
But you know, back in the day, when the public education system just started, I'm thinking they probably had obviously smaller classrooms and you know, mixed ages where you have older kids and younger kids, and so there was probably some help of, you know, some mutual help in that regard, right?
Erik said yes, but also it created problems when the classrooms got bigger, and that's why they, you know, age appropriateness, I guess. But he said yes, there was help. You know, they all helped each other, but that was before. He says, of course, cheating's always been in the game because it's been there forever, but it was more of a he makes me feel like more of a Montessori type feel, like they wanted to learn how, and it wasn't in their thoughts to cheat to get it, because they just wanted to learn because they could see the benefits from it, from learning how to read, learning how to do math. They could see the benefits from it because they could see if you were able to do these, you had these other jobs and you could go further, you could travel and stuff. And Erik says that's one of the things that has been taken out of the education is the excitement of why you're learning.
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm against grades. I think there should be mastery lists. Like, you mastered tying your shoes, great. Okay, now you mastered the multiplication tables up to whatever. Yes, great. You know, things like that, so that, you know, you don't go on to the next level if you have not mastered the one below. And then you don't have the grade stigma. So that's just
Erik says that would be really good. He says, because, you know, people are ashamed of their grades.
Yeah, you concentrate on gaining a skill, not on gaining a grade, a particular grade.
Yeah, and Erik says, and then there are people who are very traumatized if they're not 100% all the time.
Yeah. Because
their identity's on that 100%.
Yeah, that's true.
And because that's how they're told their identity is.
Yeah. All right. Will the curriculum, this is from members of the community, will the curriculum change toward nurturing student gifts, talents, and include more teachings on emotions, life skills, bullying, mediation, finances, mental health, instead of focus on general subjects and electives that don't help with practical matters in life? I don't know. I think reading, writing, and arithmetic is pretty important, but I mean, and maybe what's the parents' role in all this? Are we supposed to teach our kids character building skills and things? Are we just gonna completely divest ourselves of all responsibility of parenting and say, here's my kid, you parent them to the public schools? I mean, I don't know. I might be wrong. What do you think, Erik?
Maybe. Well, Erik says that was kind of the idea that a lot of parents had probably 50 years ago or so, you know, that the school teaches, because that's just the dynamics back then of how things were, he says. But are they going to start teaching other things? Erik says they're going to start, yes, they will start teaching other things, but not to the degree where the kid becomes so adverse at it they can teach it too. It's almost like seed planting. So if they want to know more about it, that they have enough information to where they can go do research or talk to their parents or who's ever raising them at home about it. So, and Erik says, and they've already started to do some things like and as he's saying this, I'm thinking also at the high school near where I live, they were teaching a course in finance, like budgeting, how, you know, kind of like a financial management type. Yeah, so they do offer that, but it's an elective.
Yeah.
But Erik says
like a life skills course, or maybe that's maybe a life skills course in general, like basics about cooking and balancing checkbooks and all that, and maybe that should be one required course at one point. I don't know, but should they be
Erik
teaching?
says they do teach something like math, in math later on in school. Like, I feel like he's like maybe high school or something, where they do teach, about balancing your checkbook or your books. He's showing me your records and stuff.
Yeah.
But Erik says it was proven that back in the day when they gave home economics to the girls and shop to the boys, that was of no value. So that's why now they've made it an elective to where all people can go to it.
Yeah.
All sexes. Yeah.
How to be successful in a job interview, how to write a resume. They're it's called adulting, man. You got to learn how to live in the world as an adult. It's more important than learning cursive writing and things like that. Oh my God.
I know. And that's kind of an art form, Erik says now, to learn cursive writing. But I mean, I learned cursive and I print like crap. So
well, me too. It didn't do any good.
So, but no. Erik says they are going to be changing things, but they can't change it drastically.
No, of course not. So should they be teaching things like critical race theory in the public schools, Erik?
Critical race?
Yeah, critical CRT.
What is that? CRT.
Oh, I think it's founded on that America was built on white oppression.
America was built on white oppression. Erik says
the oppression.
Erik says he says this is what's going on now is it's about honoring everybody. He says it's all about love. He says it's not about race. And he says
blame.
Yes, and he says it's about loving ourselves, because he says when you love yourselves, you don't have the time and energy to spew on other people.
Yeah.
And he says that's really what it's about. And he says we should be learning how to love ourselves so that we can teach that to our children. Because if we can't do that for ourselves, how can we expect our children to do that?
We should teach children to, I don't know if you can teach love, but I
show them. You show them through your
yes, modeled it.
Yes, yeah.
Share stories. Read books that model that. All sorts. Read stories to the the smaller kids. But the CRT seems like it's fear-based. It's hate-based. That this one's bad and I'm right and you're wrong, and
Erik says yes, and that's it's even like they even have it in they had it in the cartoons and the cowboy days or whatever. The good person was in white, the bad person was in black, and it's just always been that way. And it's
bad. All right, so should we have school choice? Like
when you say
vouchers, give parents vouchers, the amount of money they would spend in where they are distributed to, and let them take that money and go to another school that they might like better, even a charter school.
Erik says yes, but the only thing is there will still be an imbalance because you go into these lower income areas where they don't have as much funding.
Yeah.
So you can go take your $10,000 and go to your voucher to another school, where somebody who lives in a low income area takes their $3,000 voucher. So it's still not going to work. But Erik says
then there shouldn't be a voucher. Then they should say, if you want to go somewhere else, space permitting.
Yes, and then Erik says, but there are schools that are really good and everybody wants to go to them, so they just say close close and, camp, like nobody can, it's not open enrollment. You have to be.
Or they have a lottery, maybe. I don't know.
But Erik says, there are solutions. And he says, and some of it boils down to how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
He says, because we can create.
That's right. Right. And I think there's not enough competition between teachers, and some of them are terrible. But all in all, I think teaching should be an extremely revered and one of the most important professions. The teachers are really shepherding in our future all the time through children. And so I think they should be paid a lot more, and certainly a lot more than the administrators and the administrators for the teachers union. I think that they definitely don't get what they need and what they deserve.
They should be paid triple what they make. I have a sister-in-law who's retiring this year. This is her last year. She's had enough. And some of it is that Erik is telling me is because some of the principals that are in there running the school don't have the education behind them. And when I say education, not the degree, but the education of being a principal.
Yeah.
Like they lack interpersonal skills, like how to motivate teachers, how to support them and stuff like that. And Erik says, this is something that is going to need to be looked at, because it's like anybody, you get somebody in a high power position and they kind of become abusive with it.
Yeah. And also principals sometimes get 10 times or more the salaries of teachers. And, I really don't think that's fair. I mean, I don't think it's fair. I really don't. Will teachers ever get the salaries and respect for the job they do every day?
Erik says, yes, they are going to, it's going to increase, but not right yet. And he gives me the feeling like in 7 years, we're going to start seeing teachers' pay increase. He says, but right now they're having a difficult time because they know, I say the education department, and then the people outside of that also know that it needs to be increased, but they don't know how to increase it without increasing our taxes, and stuff like that. But Erik says they can get a little bit more creative, and even if they increased our taxes by $100, when you do that by all these people, it can make a significant difference. And Erik says they're also looking into, he makes me feel like they're also looking at bonuses for these teachers.
Yeah. And it should be merit-based. I think pay should be merit-based, because, I'll be honest with you, there's some crap teachers. Yes. Really awful teachers. And I've experienced that. I've experienced the good and the bad. And so I don't think there should be tenure. If you're good enough, then you keep your job. If you're not good enough, you don't keep your job. But what is your opinion on that, Erik?
He agrees with you, because there are some teachers who have been there for a long time and they're burnt out. Yeah. And they're just there for.
And they said, I got job security. I'm not going to try anymore. And
I've got 10 more years. Yeah, they go
every day and just slept on her desk.
Wow.
In high school.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's like, I remember in 8th grade, I used to have a teacher. Ninth grade. Every Monday, my teacher, and I still remember her name. I'm not going to say in case some weird chance she's listening or somebody knows who I'm talking about. But every Monday she would come to work, and she had short hair like you, and she'd come to work with hickeys all over her neck.
Oh my God.
And all I had to do was write a complete sentence about this story. And that's what she'd have us do, is read and then answer, write 10 questions, or 10 sentences to her 10 questions. And all it had to be was a complete sentence. And I never wrote a sentence about what the story was, because it was boring to me, and I would just sleep in the class, and I'd always get 10 points out of 10 points.
Oh, well, I remember my fellow students in that high school class were upset that they weren't learning anything, just sleeping teacher all the time. And so we, 3 of us decided, well, we'll go to the counselor's office and talk to him about it. I was the only one that showed up in the counselor's office and the teacher. And it was, oh my God, so awkward. She was incensed. Anyway, I don't remember after that.
Jesus.
Oh my God, the
So,
other parents didn't show. They left me hanging, man.
that is, oh, my stomach sank for you. No, but Erik says it will be, because they know they know, they're aware, well, she's only got 5 more years and then she'll be gone. And, but she's not really doing anything wrong to get fired. So they don't waste their time on that, because they have these children who Erik says they have gaping holes in their heart because they need love, and they're acting out in so many ways. And that's where a lot of attention goes on, and a lot of frustration goes on. And there's a CE member that a client of mine who's a teacher, and I'm not going to say where, but she absolutely loves her teaching, and she really looking at why some of these kids are problems, because there's very low income where she teaches.
Yeah.
And she really goes like behind the back door to see where it is, like what's going on, to see what, looking to see what's causing it, and to work with that instead of saying you're a bad kid because of this. Because some of the kids go home to a very
difficult family.
Yes.
It reminds me of some of these great movies like Criminal Minds and stuff. These or To Sir with Love. Oh my God, Sidney Poitier, I love you. That's the kind of teachers that are just so powerful. I mean, they should be paid so much, because if they deserve it, because they have so much power to turn around a kid's life and to make them our future leaders. All right. Of course, there are some teachers that pick on their students. I mean, the computer teacher, and Michelle was in 4th grade, and she was on the computer, and this lady said, get off the computer, but she didn't right away because Michelle's like hyper focused, and she slapped her in the face. But, oh my God, I was livid. And anyway, she had to apologize, but she didn't get fired, which she probably should have. And then Miss Lane, I will say her name, I don't give a crap. A 6th grade math teacher for Erik just looked at him and said, you're stupid, like that. It was so devastating for him. So yeah, they're more good than bad, but there are bad ones, and they don't deserve a job.
And Erik says, he's telling me with some of the changes that are coming about with the education system, those kind of teachers are going to be weeded out, because it's almost like things will be shifting for the better for them, but yet there's going to be other things that they're going to have to do, the teachers. And it's going to come down to it where they're not going to want to do that. It's not really what they signed up for. And this, Erik says, there's going to be a process of weeding out some of those. He goes, but there will always be that one or that two or whatever, because we need those people, because they do help us grow, he says.
Polarity. So there's a lot of question with this Virginia and I can't remember, the Virginia election or the New Jersey, or both, about, parents are seeing what their kids are learning, and they're appalled. I can't remember why, or that they're not learning. And so they've been going to these council, school board meetings up in arms, pissed off. And one politician said, well, the teachers union should be the one responsible for the only one that decides what your kid learned. The parents should have nothing to do with it. Well, what do you think? Shouldn't be, I think it should be a mix.
Erik said, yes, it should be a mix. And Erik says, they're saying that it should only be the union because they know the parents they're pretty powerful. Because when you get parents that show up, you're getting parents that care. And then you're getting parents that are really pissed, he says. So they're backing off. They don't want to, because they know that the parents can be pretty aggressive sometimes in their words. And so this is why they're saying that. But he says, absolutely not. Parents, the caretakers of the children should definitely be involved in it, because you don't, what you're doing is you're handing somebody the key to your daughter or son's education and saying, you be the one to open it up for us. We don't want nothing to do with it. This way, with the parents or the caretakers, whoever, they're saying we have an input. He says it can't, he says it has to be a community of people working together, not just one. And he says that's part of why things are in a mess, because we gave the responsibility to everybody else and we just washed our hands free of it.
Yeah, that's true. Will school shootings decrease ever or continue as they are?
Erik says they're not going to decrease soon.
Okay.
Yeah, he says not soon. And
that's an issue about mental illness. We need to mental illness awareness and help for those that are mentally ill. So just so important.
He says it is. It's about mental illness. It's about abuse. And you know, Erik says they get plenty of warning signs.
Yeah. And a lot of parents have guns in the house, even though they know their child has a mental illness of some sort. They should reap the consequences legally too. Absolutely.
Well, Erik says, you know, he says two, I only know of one, that they're making an example out of them.
Good.
About being responsible, because
you
know, we do have a responsibility to our children to provide a safe environment, regardless if what our views are about the right to bear arms. We have a responsibility to keep our children safe. And Erik says, when we say our children, it's not just the children under our roof, but it's children around.
Yeah.
And Erik says they're going to be made an example of.
Okay, good. You know, parents again had the opportunity to see what their kids were learning because of the lockdown, and they were appalled by. And I think it was a lot of it was the woke agenda that was being taught, like what pronouns to use and not use, and you know all that kind of stuff that the parents want their kids to know how to read a book and critically assess it, and want to learn, you know, math and things like that, science. So what was it? Was that one of the reasons we had the lockdown was to, you know, the sunlight is the best disinfectant, to shine light on the miseducation of our kids?
Erik is telling me, he says it's kind of like the same thing, because when I worked in banking and we had 3 weeks, 4 weeks vacation, we had to take 2 weeks off together, because they said during that time, we had to legally take this off. It was part of, so that they've said, because if you're embezzling money or doing something wrong or whatever, they'll be able to find it within 2 weeks. So we always had to take 2 weeks off together and stuff. And Erik says, this is kind of like the same thing with this. When there's dirt under the rug and you have a lot of traffic walking over the rug, it's going to get moved around and things are going to come out. And he says, and this is part of the good things that are coming from this. People see it as it's a bad thing, devastated, they can't believe, they're going, oh my God. But Erik says, it's a good thing, because had this never happened, we would have never seen this. And, you know, about the reading and that, there's a program here in our school district that's supposed to make kids read and read more and do all this. Well, my daughter was able to, you know, she knew that that's what they're doing, but she was able to do her work without reading the book. She knew how to pick through it and do all that. She goes, I don't need to do that. But yet it's a program so that the kids will read. And so they're thinking, because the kids are passing, the kids are reading.
I know, but that's not true. Sometimes they
No.
soft pass. How much of our history will be changed? I'm glad that now we know we don't teach our children that Columbus was a hero that discovered America. That, but is U.S. history, especially in this current education system, teaching history accurately, or is history being manipulated to fit a certain agenda?
He says it's manipulated to teach a certain agenda. It's definitely not, there's a little bit of facts and then they get twisted. It's kind of like, I dug a hole with a spoon outside, and then someone else says, well, she dug a ditch with a spoon.
Okay, yeah, I got you. How can parents, so this is very important, with a low budget and little time, and sometimes it goes hand in hand, support their children's learning?
Erik says, show up at the school.
Yeah.
Show up at the school. Call.
Yeah.
And request online, he says, now that we're doing Zoom and Skype or whatever, how they're using, he says, request an online appointment with them. And he says, and you keep calling all the time. And he says,
wheel gets the grease.
And let them know, like, I know we're in a low income area, or I know my kid is this or whatever, but they need this, they need that. And the school system has to provide it for them.
Yeah. I also think as a community, we should help with the education of children with, supporting community centers, after school community centers that can have tutors. I mean, I volunteered as a tutor for many years with my kids in school. So, I think those who can should, basically.
And Erik says this is really good for kids who are on the honor roll society and stuff like that in high school, because they have to have volunteer hours, so many hours a year when they're on the honor roll. He says, and they could go in there and help tutor these younger kids. And he says, and what's happening with that is they get their hours, the younger kids get their teaching, but they're being taught by somebody who's more in their age range, and it's reinforcing what the teenager knows, and it's also building their confidence and their self-worth, because they're able to already start seeing how they're able to teach and show that to other people.
Exactly. And what about churches or the elderly, like these independent living centers or any elderly? I mean, it would be it would be so mutually beneficial to have, an elderly person that has their cognitive faculties in good shape, for the elderly to tutor, even if it's just about life skills or life or philosophies, but also core curriculum. What about that?
Erik says yes, because there are several people who live in assisted living places.
There used to be teachers too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Erik says.
Yeah.
And business owners, business people.
As long as the government doesn't get in, well, you have to prove that you've taught them that, and you have to fill those paperwork out, they won't bother doing it. All right.
Yeah, Erik says no, they won't.
Okay. Will education be affordable to all eventually? I mean, and what can be done about the cost of student loans and colleges and stuff like that?
Erik says, yes, it will be. And Erik told me this probably like 3 years ago to someone, that they're going to be doing something with the debt. And now you hear about them taking some of it off and that. But Erik is saying that they are going to be doing stuff with this. There is going to be a shift that's happening with this, because we have a crazy cost to go to college. And I even asked Erik the other day, because we went up to where our daughter goes to college, do the teachers get a pay are these professors getting a substantial salary because of what we pay for them to go to school? And They make more than regular school teachers, but they're still not making the.
No, no. And it's a student loan system that started all that, because people don't get it. It's like, okay, well, I can just go to school, a real expensive place, and I don't have to worry about the student loan for a while. So there's that buffer, like, oh, that's not real money, that I'm gonna have to pay back. But so I think that it should be much lower cost and have work for the school programs and no loans, just no loans, just no loans.
Well, Erik says, it's.
For a few loans, I'll say. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Erik says it's they should have it on as, if you're making the grades, then this is what your fee is, and he said they are looking at to redo it, but the way he showed me, like, if you keep your grades above this average, then your school's $10 a week as opposed to $40 a week or something,
Yeah.
because then you weed out the people who just go because their parents tell them this is what you have to do, and then they don't know how to manage their time accurately.
Yeah, and you go and have to pay $300,000, and you got a poetry degree. I mean, you can do with that. I mean, seriously, people have to be more responsible for what they choose. I mean, you can learn poetry on your own, but just pay $300,000, whatever. Okay, what's the education going to look like in like 300, 1,000 years, something like that, in the distant future? And will time travel become a new education tool? Go back.
That's a good one, Mom. He says that's a good one, Mom. The education that we have now is definitely not what it's going to be like in 30, 40 years from now, even.
Oh, really?
Because he says it's because we're evolving, and he says, and we're not buying into a lot of this BS. He chooses other words, but he says we're not buying into this BS. He says this is a time of ascension. This is a time that we're really waking up. He says we're already awake, but now we're starting to realize we're awake, and more people are talking. He says, Mom, what have you done for so many people? What, the two of you and Erik, oh my God, it's just absolutely amazing. And he says, and he always says, and what you do goes to 10 people and then goes to 10 more and 10 more. And he says, so it's definitely going to shift, because he says, right now we're struggling with keeping the lies tied down so nobody sees them, but it's like they're unraveling them, and it's going to be seen, and
it's good.
Education is going to be more life enriching.
Will it eventually become less about force? You have to go to school, and more like voluntary, and more like, I just want to go to a school. I know what I want to be. I just want to learn how to do that.
Erik says people are going to want to go to school because it's life enriching. It's not going to be, you have to color inside the lines. You have to learn this verse or do this kind of math. He says it's going to be different. Yeah.
Good. When will we see a significant change in addressing the bullying problem? If we will.
Erik says we would, he says, if a pretty popular political figure had somebody damaged one of their children or grandkids, we would definitely see a switch right away. But he says, we're getting real close to getting that addressed even more. And I don't know. I just, the way Erik says that, I just feel like that he showed me the picture of those parents, that kid killed some people and they're holding the parents responsible.
Oh, yeah. Because they bought him a gun for his birthday or something. Yeah. Or Christmas.
Or some, I don't know, but he says it's like, that is really going to open up more windows to things
Yeah.
than what we realize, and of
Do you
course
think,
it's,
do you think parents should be responsible for their child bullying another kid
um,
under certain like they know about it and the other kids getting hurt, black eyes and all that?
Eric says, yes, because then the reason why they're being bullied is because of what's going on at home.
Yeah, usually, yeah.
What's not being monitored or watched, because either the blankets are over the parents' eyes or whatever, and because it may not be the parents that are doing the bully at home. It could be an older sibling, it could be the kid next door or something,
Yeah.
but not paying attention. And but Eric says, yes, he says there has to be some accountability, and somebody has to be the voices for these kids. And when we start seeing that the parents are being held accountable, then this is going to start rolling down to where more parents are going to start being more aware.
Yeah, and the teachers or the school should have a responsibility to let the parents of the bully know what's going on. And sometimes so this information never sometimes gets to them. So,
and that sometimes they don't want to know the information.
Yeah, really. All right. So what's going to happen with homeschooling? You think that given the problems with, I mean, I homeschooled my kids for many years, but do you think there's going to be a trend more to homeschooling?
Eric says there already is.
Yeah, I think people are leaving the public education system. What's going to be the best thing to come out of the school system in the next 5 years?
Eric said first thing was the truth.
Good. About
the
what they're being taught.
Yeah, what's the restrictions? Like somebody's telling the school district what they have to be taught, and nobody's questioning it. And when he's telling me that, I think about when my daughter was doing a history thing about World War II and was saying, I said, oh, but let me tell you what really happened, because then and I was going on and telling her, and I said, she goes, I just need to pass the test tomorrow. And I said, okay, but just know that stuff they're telling you isn't true. And Eric says, there's somebody there telling them this is what you have to tell.
Yeah.
And he says, this is how it is. And nobody wants to say, but this isn't accurate, or this isn't correct, or this is teaching false information, or this is teaching that. And he says some of the stuff that we're being taught teaches racism.
Yeah, maybe reverse racism. I don't know, but I don't know. But I remember Lucas had a teacher that had a very specific ideology, and the prompt for an essay was like, oh, well, I don't know if I need to sort of address this to placate the teacher because he agrees this way, I disagree with them. So I just gave the advice, Lucas, just tell the truth, express your opinions. This is what he's asking for. I don't know what happened about that. He probably caved and just placated the teacher. But that happens a lot too. They're afraid to voice their own opinion because they know that the professor or the teacher may have a completely different opinion.
Yes. Especially when they're under the age of 18.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a voice for them at home.
Yeah. Is it true that the dumbing down of American students and the curriculums intentional by the elites? Is there any merit in removing slavery and other atrocities from school curriculum? Removing slavery? No, we should be taught that. That's a huge part of our history. So anyway, first question: are the elites trying to purposely, intentionally dumb down American students?
Erik says yes.
Really?
Well, what it is they don't want us to know the truth. They give us a little bit of information, but not the real truth.
Well, now we have to see things through a clear lens. We have to be taught about the slavery and the Trail of Tears and all that, all the
yes,
of course, so we can learn how not to be. But if they manipulate that to say, well, see, you white student, you need to apologize to this student of color because you come from a long line of oppressors, blah, blah. That's where it can get out of hand. So
Erik says they need to elaborate more on both of those topics, because like
Yeah.
you're talking about the Trail of Tears and the children, the First Nation, Native Americans, that stuff needs to be elaborated on it more. He says more for like for the kids in upper grades, to where they have this added on, and then the slavery need to know. Erik says they don't really tell the whole story. It's almost like a Disney version of it.
Yeah. No, they should be real, as age appropriate. But one thing I don't want to see happen is them using history to penalize students in some way, weaponizing history, which is what I see happening.
No, well, Erik says it's really should be for it's to be for educational purposes, but then also he's saying how they should also tie into it. And he says, and this will happen down the road, is this is why we do what we do now, because we weren't doing this. This is how we allowed slavery to come into play. This is how we allowed, the Trail of Tears to happen, or the children going into those residential schools and stuff like that, and how we took things away from people, just how we did things. So this is why we're talking about, but this is why we're doing what we're doing, so that history doesn't repeat itself on different levels.
But the school system, education system, maybe they're just a bunch of cowards. They want to disinfect our history, which is then we can't learn from it. So,
well, it's the fear of the truth, because Erik says,
I'll set you free, man.
Yeah, and Erik says, there's a lot of fear in knowing the truth. It's and for some people, there's fear in it. It's like, if I don't know anything, then I'm okay.
Okay, I got 3 more quick questions. I know we're running out of time. Why do states like my home state of South Carolina, this person says, and Mississippi too, stay at the bottom of the barrel in the education rank?
Erik says that's because of your political leaders.
Okay.
And Erik says more people need to go there and talk. He says lobby, but I feel like it's more talk. More people need to talk.
Yeah. Well, what are these leaders doing? Not giving enough of the money to these school systems, or money doesn't fix everything, but
no. Nobody's speaking up. He says nobody's speaking up, really saying we are at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Nobody is speaking up. And he says, and this is where the communities and everybody, the education needs to come in behind and say, look, this is what we need.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. 2 more. What was the impact of removing God from the classroom? And also the Pledge of Allegiance. I want to know that too. I think we should still do that.
I do too. And I'm not it's Erik says, well, first, the reason why they removed God is because we started having different cultures coming in and belief in different. So in order to appease and stuff, because of whatever, they just took it out instead of coming into something more common.
Right. We used to do the Lord's Prayer when I was a kid, but to me, that violates the constitutional thing of separation of church and state anyway. So,
well, Erik says they could
in our homes and our churches, but not in a government run institution.
Erik says, it's like having a moment of silence to however you use.
There we go. That would be nice.
Yeah. And Erik says, and what was the other one?
Just Pledge of Allegiance.
Erik, because Erik says this is like, he says there's somebody that says that they make their bed every day, not because they're real neat freaks, but it sets the stage for their day. They're prepared.
Yes.
And he says, when you go into class in the morning, he says, you have a moment of silence to use as you wish. And then he says, and then you do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. What it does is you're setting the stage. You're coming, what that does is it brings the kids to almost like wake up, like consciousness or something. He says it's like okay, this is what I do today. And it gives them a structure on how to start their day.
Yeah, exactly.
And he says, and it's also teaching them respect.
Yeah.
And he says, it doesn't mean that they're teaching, like you have to have respect for the flag, but it's teaching them a form of respect. And he says, but people see it as other different ways or whatever. And of course, they could always put in their own words, whatever they could pledge allegiance to their own flag.
Raise the vibration at the beginning of the class. I know.
Yes.
Yeah, Lucas, they had to sing this land is your land, blah, 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 blah. He thought it was, and above me I saw a puppy instead of above me. He thought it was a puppy. He saw a puppy.
Oh, that's cute. I love it.
Anyway, last question. What do we get right in the current education system? Dun, dun, dun.
What did we get right?
Yeah, what are we doing right?
Erik says is one of the main things that a lot of these kids are learning, that they have a responsibility to show up. And if they don't, they get to see what they get. And this is a learning tool that they're going to find later in life. If you don't show up, you don't get something in return.
Right. One, 2 cents from me, last but not least, is I think that community colleges ought to be used more, like the first 2 years, and then go to a 4-year if you want, and also technical trade schools, etc.
Oh, yeah.
I sure as hell wish we had a plumber in my family.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? And they make a lot of money.
They do. That's great. All right. Well, anything else you want to add, Erik, or Denise? Is there anything you want to ask or say?
Erik is saying, though, these children who have special needs, learning disabilities and that, he says technical schools would do really great also for them, to where they can also make a very good living and live a productive life. And as he's saying that, I remember I had a friend whose brother was a slow learner, had a learning disability, and they put him in a trade school because he loved cars, and he became a very good mechanic.
Great.
Owning his own shop.
Everyone, people.
Yes, it's like we think a 4-year degree makes you something, but there's stuff that a technical school can give you that a college can't.
That's true. That's true.
So, and Erik says, college doesn't make you smart.
No, life makes you smart, and you make you smart.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Denise Ramona, DeniseRamona.com, amazing healer channel. What else would you like to add to your many accolades?
You said it good. You said it good. Erik says he loves you, and he really thanks you for keeping this up, he says.
Okay, I love you too. Thanks for bearing with me too, guys. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
You too.